You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you. Hey guys, welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm Maureen.
I'm Janice.
And we are back with another one of our favorite things. We're doing character introductions. That's not what we were calling it before, but that's what we're character breakdowns. Something I don't even remember what we called it. It's been so long since we've done one of these. I think January or December was the last time we did one of these character breakdowns. So we are going to be starting with one of our favorite new people and one I don't think we got enough of. We're talking Agnes today. Agnes.
I agree.
Is Harmon her last name? Is it Agnes Harmon?
Harmon. Harmon.
Yes. And I really liked her addition. And of course, we got the knowledge that she was coming at the end of season 2. So we knew she was. So the whole season, I don't know about you, but the whole season 3, I was like, okay, where is she? She's gonna come now. She's gonna come now. I thought we were gonna they made a necessary big deal of it. I thought they were gonna put her in more than just 2 episodes. I was a little disappointed by that.
Yeah, I guess it's just when they could bring her into the story and make it work. But it was a lot of buildup for that, I guess, because we know that Georgiana was looking for her, trying to find her ever since she got that bracelet that Sydney had sent with the other stuff to the Parkers, or had sent, I should say.
I actually forgot about that.
You did?
Okay. I don't have cancer technically anymore, but I can still claim cancer brain. I forgot about that temporarily.
Yes, you needed reminding. That's all.
It was seashells, right? It was a seashell bracelet or necklace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's how we knew that it felt like we would meet her even before they made the announcement about the actress. So
I actually thought for a time that maybe she was going to be dead because they didn't bring her in for so long. I thought that's what they were going to do, is they were going to be this cruel, give Georgiana the hope of, hey, by the way, your mom's alive. Oh, I'm just kidding. She's dead.
Well, they had to get Georgiana through the trial. That took a fair amount of time. And then all the other storylines that were going on.
And they had to get Georgiana to a place where she sort of became who she used to be. And then that way her mom could help bring her back to who she has never been able to be.
Right. Yeah. No, that's right.
So that's good. Yeah. So what did you think of her character?
Well, I thought she was amazing. Given what she would have been through, I thought she was great at not overreacting to Georgiana's reaction, which would have been easy to happen. And very patient and explaining to her why that she'd been looking for her all this time, and that here they were 50 miles apart, this for 5 years, they'd been 50 miles apart.
Can you imagine knowing that?
Yeah, it would have been something. And because, of course, when Sydney brought her, we know it was about 5 years ago. And 5 years, we were told that in season 1.
Yep.
So now it's been like 6-7 years, however much time has gone by. And so they weren't there the whole time because her mother didn't arrive until 5 years ago from the current time. But still, that she had come to England and assumed her daughter was still back in
Antigua.
Thank you. All of a sudden, I couldn't think of where they were.
I got you. I got you the way you got me.
Yeah, back in Antigua. And so that, they were kind of looking for each other in Antigua when that's not where either of them were. So we don't know where her mother was after she was sold. We don't know if it was still in Antigua or somewhere else. But then she came to the island with her slave owner and was able to get away and get freedom. And, I did some reading about this, and there was about 100 years there where some of the cases and some of the judges said that if you touch English shore, you will not be able to be a slave. You won't be a slave anymore. And some that just said you couldn't be taken away against your will. So there was, the case law went back and forth. It was real interesting to read that England, there was no English law that ever made slavery legal. And so then the debate was who it covered, was it, but there's a long history ever since the Romans came of slavery. A lot, it wasn't African slaves being brought in necessarily, but it's quite complicated case law that I was reading about, but there were a few people that really stood up, a few judges.
Yeah.
Really stood up and said, that this isn't right. But it was also interesting to learn that at one point, the Brits that were in power made it illegal for the Quakers, who were big proponents of, they were big abolitionists, big proponents of slaves being freed. The Quakers and uncompliant Protestants and Catholics could not be in, especially the Quakers couldn't hold office in like the House of Lords. So, I mean, the House of either one in the House and the Parliament. And so they were, that slowed down the process because the people who were most in favor of it weren't allowed to hold office. And the Church of England was really used as a weapon.
Yes.
In that way.
It was.
So it was, yeah.
It was interesting that in church on Sunday, I knew this was what we were talking about, but I was listening to church and our pastor brought up William Wilberforce, which I'm sure you've read his name coming across your study on this, but he was in English. He was in politics in England. He was in Parliament. He was a British politician. He was a philanthropist, and he became a leader of the abolitionist movement in England because he underwent an evangelical Christian conversion.
Yes, and it talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was because of that he came in contact with Thomas Clarkson and a group of activists against the slave trade. And it was in 1833, I think I was reading, that the Slavery Abolition Act came into it. That's what it led to. His fighting for this for years and decades. He left Parliament in 1826, but in 1833, all of his work with this abolitionist group led to the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833. And Sanditon is based in, I always want to say 1812 because that's what a lot of Jane Austens are, but I don't think it's
1816, I think, or 17. It started. The series started.
So it's interesting that they set it in that time frame, but this Abolition Act wouldn't have come until 33.
Right,
but they were fighting for it. Those judges, like you said, those judges were a part of that, and I think that's a really interesting time period to write from, and I think they did that really well.
Yeah, and because of what I read about that, it made sense that both in court for Georgiana, he made the statement that someone who comes to our shores cannot be a slave, but on the other hand, when and Agnes was talking about the fact that she fought for her freedom, and so she wasn't automatically made a non-slave when she arrived, and that was that conflict. And because even though it was even earlier than that, it was illegal for slaves in England. Later, it was later before it was not illegal for slaves in all of the British colonies, and so Antigua would have been included in that.
Yeah,
but they weren't.
They followed later.
Yes, that's right. Anyway,
now when she was talking to Georgiana on that beach, when they were disclosing all of this stuff, she didn't give a whole lot of detail about how she came to leave her father and that was something that I don't want to say I felt it was a mistake, but I wish that she had given Georgiana more information about how she became to know her father, how they had this child, how she was removed.
It said she did say that she had a child with him, and that was that was the 6 months she was with her, or with Georgiana, was the happiest of her life. But then he decided to marry, and that's his new wife he didn't want to have her there anymore, and that's
Yeah.
why they sold her. But interesting that the child was separated. So he obviously was attached enough to Georgiana that even though he sent her mother off, he still kept her and loved her, and and wanted the best for her, and especially and so one of the things she says, Agnes says, is in Antigua, I'm not a free woman. And that was still true at that time.
Yeah.
If she'd been there, she was never able to return. It says, then my then master brought me to England 5 years ago, and I fought for my freedom, but I lost hope that I would see you again, because she couldn't go back to Antigua.
Yeah.
Didn't know she was, so that kind of explains it. We got a little bit in court about it, but yeah, she did explain that much.
I wanted more.
Yeah.
I wanted, because, and the reason I wanted more was because of how and again, I know that there was a big gap between the writing and recording of season 1 to seasons 2 and 3, but that I go back to that luncheon in season 1 where it was in Georgiana's honor and she defended her mother and said, no, they loved each other. I wanted Agnes to sort of tell her a little bit more about her father from that perspective, or refute it from that perspective.
Well, I kind of think it's a case of her mother didn't know what her father had told her, you know what I mean, about her. And so he obviously, I'm sure he told her, you can suppose from what we do know, that Georgiana's father told her that she loved her mother, but then she died in childbirth, just to make it.
Oh, that's, oh my gosh.
That was the tale that he told her.
Yeah.
Is that she had died, not that he had sold her.
So
that's why it was such big news when
they found out she was
Sydney
alive.
found out differently. Yeah. Sydney's the one who found out her mother was still alive. And wrote that in the letter.
Do you think it was more that he kept Georgiana because he cared for her, or that he couldn't get rid of, well, that sounds so callous, but that he couldn't give Agnes to someone else or sell her off to someone else with this child with her?
No, I think he kept her because he loved her, because I think it would have been more property, because, the child's going to grow into a useful working human being. So I don't think that would have been an issue at all.
And it's interesting that he didn't leave any of his property to his wife.
We don't know if she was even alive. Yeah, my guess is she died somewhere. My guess is that the wife that she married died earlier, and then he was more free to show Georgiana how much he loved her.
That would make more sense.
Because also we know from the first season when Sydney talked about the fact that when he was in Antigua and realized how awful the Institute of Slavery was, and how his friend, which was Georgiana's father, decided to free his slaves. And that's when, and then he died shortly after, and had given the task to Sydney of bringing Georgiana to England and having her properly educated and being her guardian.
Yeah. So, and likely to England, because she would be able to be free in England.
Right.
As opposed to Antigua. So that was my only complaint, is that I just wish that we got more. And this is not a fault of the writers. This is because my penchant is for backstory and history. I complain about this every season. It's not bad writing. It's just my preference to know all of the backstory of every character. And it's just not possible to do that. But I do wish that something we got more from Agnes was a little bit more about her telling Georgiana her relationship with her father. What that was like, how it evolved, that sort of thing. I did want more of that. And part of me wanted more of that because that would have meant we got more Agnes in the season.
Yes. Yeah. And I would guess that she, the relationship was slave and master. And then she bore his child, and that changed his feelings, but also then he was marrying this other woman who probably was involved at the same time. And so how long she was his slave and how long she even really was with him or knew him is questionable.
Yeah. all we know for certain was that it was a minimum of 15 months, a little over a year minimum.
That they were together.
Mm-hmm. She had 6 months with Georgiana.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
She could have given birth at 8 months instead of 9 or 10, but
yeah, that's right.
I was trying to
My
do quick
guess
math, and I'm not good at it.
It was a little longer than that, but
yes, I think so
most
too.
of that would have been just her being his slave.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it's real interesting to think back. It's such complicated relationships at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, things are complicated now, but they were really complicated.
They were.
And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if some of the writers wrote, especially of season 2 and 3, wrote their own background about Agnes and Georgiana's history and all that. But
I would love to hear that from them. I think Justin Young, if you ever turn on this podcast and hear this, I would really like to hear your ideas of Agnes's relationship with Georgiana's father, please.
Well, and then we want to see what we know he wrote up about Colburn, about Alexander Colburn's background. And
yes. Oh my gosh, can we just do one more season where we just do the backstories? Just give us you don't even have to use the same actors because it'll be histories. You can use younger actors, different actors. I just want to know. And I want to see it played out.
Yeah, well, even if they release the writing, that would be fun,
Or the deleted scenes, please.
Yeah. Of which there could have been lots, and I'm sure there were lots of rewrites, that would have had maybe more information, but there wasn't time to shoot it,
And the original script that they were working on post season 1, pre-cancellation. I would like to know that too. But Agnes, though, what I really liked about her character was her stoicism. And when she was introduced to Georgiana that first time by Mary, or even when she went up to Mary, going back to the first time we see her, she was very sure of herself. She was very quiet. She was very calm, but it wasn't like a meek quiet. It was like she was this pillar, and she would just knew what she was there for. She knew what she had to do, and she wasn't going to be cowed by anyone. She was so strong of a character that she made a huge impression just from the 2 episodes she was on. Massive impression.
Right. And she was very calm, and you could tell she was hurting when Georgiana's reaction, but she could understand it.
Exactly. And that's not something you see a lot because it's a period piece, but it's also a drama. So you don't see a lot of that non-reaction, but she was just very, okay, I'm going to let you have this moment. I understand that you're upset, and I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to speak truth to you. And you're going to realize it's truth because you're my kid and it's truth.
Right. And Mary was persistent, which was good. And talked logically to Georgiana about that you need to at least listen to what she has to say.
Exactly.
And for a fact, the scene we didn't see when Mary took Agnes into the house and they talked together before she brought Agnes to Georgiana, that Mary asked a lot of questions.
Yes.
And she was very protective of Georgiana. So, she would not have brought her to find her if she didn't really believe she was her mother.
And certainly not in such a public setting like that.
Yeah.
Because that would have, if it wasn't her mother, that would have been a huge embarrassment to Georgiana and a huge upset. There's no way that Mary would have put either of them in that position. And not just, I don't mean Mary and Georgiana, I mean Agnes and Georgiana. She wouldn't have put either one of them in that position to be faced with the falseness of this claim.
Right.
So that's a deleted scene I'd like to see too, please. I'd like to know that conversation. That one of the things she brought up likely was, I left her this necklace or this bracelet. I told him to say this to her, because that would have been an indication to Mary, okay, you have to be her because no one else would know this information.
Right. And which is how she finally convinced Georgiana too. And also when Georgiana, of course, was really quick to assume that her recent fame due to the trial was the reason for someone coming to find her.
Yeah.
And she had to straighten her out on that. But she did it in such a calm, loving way. Most of us would have been very defensive but no, she just explained that She didn't read the London newspapers. She didn't know any of that.
Mhm.
And that it was Mr. Molyneux that told her about Georgiana. And that the reaction that Georgiana had, Crystal did a great job of
Mhm.
acting that out, and her reaction, Otis, and that little smile that she gave at the mention of his name.
Yep.
That was good.
Mhm.
I'm glad. I mean, for those those of you who haven't seen it, that one deleted scene we saw where from season 1,
Oh, okay.
where Otis wrote to Georgiana
Mhm.
that he'd gone out to sea and was trying to really change his ways and make up for some of his debt.
Yeah. Make himself worthy of her.
Right. And then I love the way that when he did talk to her later, he explained that the reason he knew some of what was going on is because he had written Sydney to try and repay him, and his widow told him that Sydney had died.
Yep.
So, yeah, that relationship was in much better shape because of the way Sydney handled it at the end of season 1.
Exactly.
He came to understand that he had been somewhat in the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
Sydney himself.
Yeah.
And tried to make up for it.
I do wonder how Otis found out about Agnes, because if Sydney was already dead when he tried to reach out, Sydney couldn't have been like, hey, her mom's alive somewhere. And I don't think Eliza would have been that
they
kind.
met through the
Oh,
Sons
that's
of
right, the Sons of Africa.
Yeah. So that would have been very logical that she would have gone to the Sons of Africa for help with her freedom, and then they got to know each other, and
she told him the story.
Yeah, and she would have known Georgiana's name because she didn't leave till 6 months, because she'd been named.
Yeah.
So the whole thing's very plausible the way it came together.
I just want to see these things. I think that's my biggest problem with anything like this is I don't just want to be told that this has happened. I want to watch it happen. And
so how do you do with books?
As I'm reading, and I'm like this with anything, as people are talking to me, like I will picture it in my mind. And so that's why I don't like conversations that make me uncomfortable, because I'm picturing everything you're telling me. Like, no, I don't, no, anything gross, anything like talking about butt. No, I don't like it. Don't talk to me about it, because it's going to be stuck in my head and I'm going to see it and I don't want to see it. So that's why I like books so much, because there's way more detail in the book.
Oh yeah. And books give you sort of the motivation people have, what's going through their head.
Do that on screen.
No.
Although Agnes was very good at doing that on screen with her. I need to look up the actress's name, so I'm not just keep calling her Agnes. But when she would give, even that time when they met at the tea house, and Georgiana was not really, but sort of yelling at Mary about how this isn't my mother. Can't you see? Whatever. Agnes in the background, the expression on her face is where we get that she understood, though she was sad. Her expressions were so spot on as to give us an exact emotion that she was feeling, or the thoughts that she was thinking, without even saying anything to us.
Right. She's very good. She was another very good choice. I'd like to see her in some other things.
Charlene White is her name.
Charlene White. Yeah, she was very convincing. I hope she had a good time playing that part.
She was in Lockwood and Co.
Which I haven't finished watching.
I have one more episode to watch, but I was like, oh, I don't really like. I thought it was gonna be funny. It started off funny, but then it started to get more like fearsome. Like, I don't like the.
Yeah. That's why I haven't finished it. Now I might have to if she's in it.
I know she's only in one episode. She's a podcast host, which is funny.
Oh, funny, yeah.
Or chat show host, which I assume is a podcast of some sort. I'm just looking to see what else she's in, because she did she's Waterloo Road was a series that she was in, and The Story of Tracy Beaker. She hasn't been in much.
She may have done a lot of stage acting.
Yeah, that's true.
It's even like I was just reading this article about, I can't remember now who it was, one of the actors that I really liked from one of the series I watched, and he spent the last many months or the last couple of years doing stage, I don't know, for when the stage reopened, doing stage work. and it's just now getting back into another filmed piece.
Yeah.
But especially British actors, a lot of them spend quite a lot of time in the
Mhm.
theater. That's one thing I absolutely loved about being in London was
Yes.
all the plays, and I, yeah, I'm afraid I'd be there a whole lot if I lived there.
Mm-hmm. When I went to London, I was a broke college student, but my suite mates and I on a whim one night were like, let's go to London, let's do it. And we bought our plane tickets. So we didn't have a ton of money. We didn't really think it through all the way. We bought the plane tickets for a year out. So we couldn't go to any of the plays, but we did hang around on the West End trying to like see what was there. We did get to sit in the Globe Theater, not the original, but the one they remade in London.
Right.
Obviously the original was burned down, but just being in that atmosphere, being in London itself, you can just sense that there's so much more. It feels more like an art form there. And I love that.
And it's more concentrated,
Yes.
and in a very relatively small area, you can get a lot of experience in the theater, which is harder in this country. I mean, New York is very, very competitive. And not that London isn't, it is, but not in the same way that it is in New York. And it's, the rest of the theater around the country is great, but it's smaller. It's not, it's more spread out.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I went to the theater, at the local college, as often as I could, and they would do summer stock. And we'd always buy tickets, even when I graduated and I was working there later. I'd always buy tickets. And sometimes there'd be some people come through that then became very famous later, but they were mostly unknowns at that time. But it was still really good, a lot of fun. And when I was in London, I was going to the theater for 6 weeks. I went to the theater almost every day.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm so jealous of that.
Yeah, it was a fine and performing arts tour, and it was incredible. Incredible.
Man, I want to do something like that. I love London. Honestly, that is one of my favorite like sometimes I'll go on vacation, like I don't need to go back. London is the one where like I almost want to, after I went there, I started looking up apartments for rent in London. Like I just wanted to be there and stay there. I love that city. I absolutely love that city. And I think that there's so much creativity that comes out of that place. It's nuts. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's good and bad in every situation.
There is. Yeah.
I think the biggest difference that you're speaking to is that people will get into doing television or whatever, not so much because they have the theatrical chops as because they fit the picture that the person, the production company wants.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I almost like it better when they come from a theater background, because you have to sacrifice a lot to be a theater actor, like a lot. You have to put all of you into that. And when you come from theater into screen, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think he is unrealistically talented. Like it's stupid how talented that man is. But he also honed his craft for years, and it was a craft.
Right.
And so I think you're spot on. I think we're gonna jump back in. I think she might have done some theater. I realized that like even Crystal Clark, her and Annie Reed were in a theater production together before filming Sanditon, before doing Sanditon.
Right.
So and I think Crystal Clark, I think she lives in London now. So I think that a lot of the people on this cast have done theater in London, I believe. So maybe that's
right.
So
or
might, if you are in theater right now, please let us know what you're doing, because we want to see it.
Right. And like when I was there, we spent a week in Stratford upon Avon, going, the Royal Shakespearean Theater, and then they have the Modern Theater. There's several theaters there. It must have been awful during the pandemic to have all that shut down. I mean, I know that I knew things were really serious in the pandemic when they shut down Broadway.
I can't, oh my gosh, those poor people who are a part of these productions. I mean, that's a lot of people obviously the pandemic put a lot of people out of work, but this is almost like who they are. If you're in theater, like this is who you are. What do you do without the theater? I have someone that I am on a team with in our Facebook groups. She was working in New York on Broadway in theater. She was I think she was part of the lighting crews on Broadway. she had to leave New York because she couldn't afford anything anymore because they had completely shut down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's sad. But with Agnes, I think that you can sort of see her. I don't even know if she's done theater, but I feel like she has that kind of expression. She has that tone of voice that just, it's quiet, but it carries. And obviously that's part of filming. That's part of the editing. That's part of the microphones and all that stuff. But still, when she speaks, it carries through. It resonates when she speaks. And it's the way that she talked with Georgiana. There was that scene when Georgiana thought she just left and she came back to tell her what happened. That's one of my favorite scenes with her because it really shows you exactly who Agnes is. It shows that she is certain of herself, but she's also has a very firm compass on right and wrong and good and bad. And she is not afraid to stand up for those things that are right and good. And that comes from, I think, needing to stand up for her own freedom and get herself free. She's not afraid to fight for that.
Another thing that was really interesting, the way they portrayed the character and she played it with Agnes, was when Lady Montrose basically tried to bribe her to leave. And so she didn't like have this big angry reaction that was apparent. It was more, you knew that she was like, no, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
And and it told her so much about what she needed to do to basically defend Georgiana and get Georgiana out of that situation.
Yeah.
And so she disappears to begin with, as far as we can tell at that point, but then she's doing something. And Georgiana's just so ready to be hurt. I mean, understandably, all these people are coming after her.
Yeah.
And so what does she do? She calls Samuel to try and legally get them to all stop, like he could really do that.
And that's when she turns real mean too.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when she's saying, I don't need anyone, I'm going to be a duchess soon. She has that conversation with Mary and Charlotte, right? But when she comes back, and then still Agnes is very patient with her and very, long suffering, as it were.
Yeah.
And she tells her that she's been to see Mr. Molyneux. I could tell from the way your face lit up that you still had feelings for him. And I wanted to find out what he was thinking and feeling. Yeah, it was, she was basically, and then when Georgiana found out what had happened with the money and everything, that was the last straw.
Yes. What I like too is that she thought ahead with that. She wasn't just like, well, I'm going to go and tell Georgiana all about this. She realized, okay, this man is not going to work for her because this is the woman that she's going to be marrying into the family of. Can't do this. Before I tell Georgiana everything that happened, before I step my foot in here, I'm going to go and see what I know is right for her. I'm going to go talk to Otis. I'm going to see, that relationship there. And I'm going to present her with another option. In that short time that she saw and talked to Georgiana, she understood her character so much so as to understand she needs to present another better option for her.
Right.
Rather than just saying, hey, you shouldn't do this. I think it's a bad idea.
Right.
So she understood so much because she paid attention. And you can see that in that dinner scene, the first episode we see her where she's at dinner with all of them.
Right.
Again, it's the expression on her face as she's watching all these characters at this dinner and she's examining them. And then she's asking questions that are, I don't know the word I'm trying to think of, that are very big questions that need to be asked by her daughter. Very
pointed and really get to the meat of the matter, as it were. And it's interesting too that conversation, her inquiries and discussion with the Montroses, Agnes's discussion with the Montroses, leads to Ralph's understanding about what was really going on by overhearing that conversation.
And that was kind of nice of Ralph too, because it's like, well, maybe him and Agnes aren't so far apart from each other.
Right. It was masterful the way they spun the story there.
My only complaint is I wish we got more. And that's the fault of good writing.
Right.
Don't write well enough to get me so invested in a character and then give me so little of them.
Yeah, and it was great when they were all together. She went with her to find Otis. That was such a wonderful scene.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you know, to see them reunited, and then you know, we see their marriage, and she was able to witness that too. How wonderful that must have been for Agnes to feel like she really helped contribute to her daughter's happiness.
And what I liked there was that at their wedding, it was just Agnes, Otis, and Georgiana, right? It was just those three. Am I remembering that correctly? What I like there is, I mean, when you're going into a marriage, the ring symbolizes continual. The ring symbolizes never ending. It's a vow. It's a
outward expression of the inward commitment.
yes. It's in the, I'm trying to think of the word that the Bible uses. It starts with a C. Why can't I think of what it is? Covenant. My God.
Yes, covenant. Yes.
It's a covenant, which is a deeply important vow. And that Agnes was there, a part of it. It's like they're making that vow with her as a part of their relationship too. That this, not only are Otis and Georgiana there to the very end, but Agnes is now in that until the very end. It's like Agnes was making that vow and that covenant to them, with them at the same time. And I like that imagery. I like that aspect of the storytelling right there, that she's just as unbreakable in this vow as the other two are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the word covenant. And one of my favorite sort of definition for covenant is the distinction between a contract and a covenant. A contract is where two people come together for a given period of time to accomplish something. Covenant is a much longer commitment, mm-hmm. if not lifelong commitment, that the union of which is more important than the parts. Mm-hmm. So, you know, to what you would, for that covenant, you give up everything else.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And anyway. That's exactly what Agnes is doing too in that moment. And I think it was that's powerful.
Yes.
It was really her. The moment she got on that set, the moment she came on screen, it was power from beginning to end.
And quiet strength.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's born of knowing your position in the world, right? And I don't mean slavery to non-slave. I mean, we are little compared to a God who is massive and huge. I mean, we're but specks, right? And I think that her quiet strength came from understanding, and it's that basis of right and wrong, good and evil. She understood that so well that she was able, and obviously I know this is acted out, but these are real people to me now, okay? They're real. that's just the way it is in my life right now. And she understood that so well. And I think that's what caused her to be this quiet, calm pillar of strength. She didn't need to kick up a fight. She didn't need to make a big noise to know that she was strong. She was sure in her strength because she knew where her strength came from.
Right.
And I think that's power.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know this was a shorter episode, but we talked a lot about, as much as we could, about Agnes. I mean, we not dragged it on. That sounds bad. We enjoyed talking about Agnes for 30 minutes, but as a new character with only 2 episodes in, I think she deserved our first spot because she's someone who we have waited for and pined for. And she has been the underlying current for one of our main characters for three seasons. I almost said 3 years. It's been what, 5 years now? 4 years? She's been the undercurrent for Georgiana's character throughout. She has been a pinpoint for Georgiana throughout. And so it was really, I think she deserved to be our first character breakdown of the season 3. I think she deserved this time. And we're going to come back at you with another episode about Agnes next, where we're talking about her and diving into her relationships with everybody on the show, not just Georgiana, not just Otis, but we're going to dig into her relationships with everybody because it was pivotal to the story. And it changed a lot of people. So we're gonna dig into that next. I hope you enjoyed this character breakdown, character analysis of Agnes. Do not forget to check out our Facebook group on the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. Go on over there. We're trying to get more. By we, I mean me. I'm trying to get more in there. Summer's a busy month for time So much so that I just called it 1 month. But it's very busy and insane for me with children. I've got 3, so it's crazy. So I'm trying to get more involved there. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more you subscribe, the more credible we are, the more we can give you things that you want, like doing contests, giving you merch, giving away merch, selling merch, and even bringing interviews to you, which is what our overall goal is. Janice and I would like to bring you some interviews with some of our favorite people. So make sure you're subscribing there. Rate us and subscribe to our podcast on platforms you listen to, like Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you listen to it. Make sure you're rating it, subscribing it, and talk with us. You want to reach out to us? We have an email, we have social media, we have YouTube comments. Go ahead and hit us up there. We would love, love, love to hear from you. And don't forget to keep those suggestions coming in for what you want us to talk about after we're done with Sanditon, which seems like that will never happen, because I feel like we've been talking about this for 2 years now. I feel like we could talk for a really long time about it. So I don't know, but let us know what you'd like to hear from us next. And don't forget to tune in next week for another breakdown of Agnes with all the characters she's around. We'll see you real soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.